All right, how's my mic working? That's a little better. Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it. It's been a minute since I've been up here. I just had 4 weeks off from preaching, which I don't think I've done since I was like 20 or 19. So that was weird. And I'm very excited to be back in the room with you guys this morning, getting to spend some time in the Word. And this is one of my favorite passages in all of the Bible. When we started mapping out the story of Luke and how we were going to traverse this, this was one of those passages that I was just really excited to dig into and share with each other. And figure out how to apply to our lives. And so we're going to be in Luke chapter 18 this morning. So if you got a copy of God's Word, I'd love for you to turn there. And as you're doing that, this summer I've had a lot more time with my kids. I've kind of gotten to, they're there. There's no school and stuff, for better or for worse. And so we've had a lot more time together and just getting to be together. And a part of what has kind of happened this summer, my kids are getting a little bit older, and they're starting to wonder about what I was like, what I did or didn't do. They're trying to ask stories. They're always stories about mistakes. Like, what's the worst thing you ever did? And I'm like, I'm not telling you that ever. But I'll give you a light one, like some of those. And it's led to like a lot of times this summer of just kind of sitting around reminiscing, just telling stories. I love reminiscing. I love sitting around a fire, getting some old friends together, like that Ben Rector song about old friends. Like those of us who are old enough to know that song makes you cry every time. Like that kind of reminiscing. I love that, I don't ever do that. I don't do that a lot. I don't know how you're built, but the way I'm built, my mind lives 3-4 years in the future, and I'm always driving at something. I don't normally get to spend a lot of time slowing down and reminiscing. And I've been trying to do better about that. And so recently I got into our little Photos app, and all the photo apps, they do those little makes those little montages now for you. I don't know, Steve Jobs makes them, I don't know, on your phone somehow. And you get to, watch the little movie reel and stuff. And I'm going back and I'm watching these things. And I'm sitting there and like 30 minutes pass, an hour pass. And it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm sitting over there with tears in my eyes, watching pictures of Rose running around when she was 2. Like just reminiscing. I need help remembering sometimes. That's one of the reasons we take all the pictures of ourselves that we do, right? Even if we don't look at them, we're intending to be able to remember. We're not very good at it, though. We have a hard time slowing down. We have a hard time going back and reading those journal entries. We have a hard time remembering the stories to tell. I think the same thing happens in our faith. It happens with our relationship with Christ, where we have these beautiful stories of what He's done in our lives and the way that He encountered us, like redeemed us, met us, changed us, forgave us, set us free. But sometimes we get a little focused on what there is to do and forget a little bit of what He's done. If you're a believer this morning in the room, if you're a Christian, if you've trusted your life to Christ this morning, my hope for you is that as we walk through this passage, it reminds you of what He's done. And if you're not a believer yet this morning, my prayer is you'll have this beautiful, clear picture of what He wants to do in you. We've been working our way through the book of Luke, right? And since chapter 9, I don't know if you're aware of this, but since chapter 9, we're in 18 now, and since chapter 9, Luke has been telling the story of what happened when Jesus left the Galilee area and made His way towards Jerusalem to go give His life for people like me and you. It's like 10 chapters of a journey story, and we're at the very end of it. All right, so since chapter 9, he's been working on it. And so we've seen, the past several weeks, we've looked at the ways that people responded to Jesus as they met Him along the way, along that journey, right? And so we've looked at the way that lepers responded to Jesus. We've looked at the way that tax collectors and children and rulers have all responded to Jesus. And we've kind of gleaned some things from those, the way that we're called to respond to Him as well. And this morning, we're going to study the account of yet another man meeting Jesus, but it's one that I identify with more than most in Scripture. And so it's a man that I identify with a lot, even though my situation is significantly different on the outside. On the inside, it's not that different at all. My hope is that you identify with him as well. So the time is drawing very near for Jesus to complete what He came to do, to save the world. He's left Galilee. He's been traveling towards Jerusalem to enter into the city. He knows what's going to happen. He knows what's going to transpire. He's going with intentionality to the cross. Disciples are coming along. They've been on the journey along with Him. They're still listening. They're still learning. Some of them are still trying to figure it out, who He is, what this is all about, what's actually going to transpire. It's not fully clear to them yet either. But Jesus does know. He's clear on this. And so you come to Luke 18 and verse 31. Jesus is still teaching along the way, even though the time is drawing near. And this is what he says. He says, taking the 12, he said to them, see, we're going up to Jerusalem. And everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished. For he'll be delivered over to the Gentiles. He'll be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon. And after flogging him, they're going to kill him. And on the third day, he's going to rise. But it says the 12, it says they understood none of these things. It says the saying was hidden from them and they didn't grasp what was said. Jesus, he's very clear on his purpose. He's very clear on the reason he's going to Jerusalem. He's very clear on the reason for which he came. And he knows where the journey leads, you know? He knows he knows where he's headed in this. He knows that he's the fulfillment of all these promises of God to save the world. And he knows that that is not going to be something that is easy or pretty, but necessary. And so he continues, bringing the 12 along with him, even though they're not clear how all this is going to go on. It says the saying was hidden from the disciples. Now, why do you think that might be? Would you have let him go? If you're with the 12, like if you're among the 12 and he's like, hey, this is what's about to happen. This is how this is going to go down. So here we go. Would you have let him go? Would you have gone with him? I know, like, knowing what you know now of Jesus, you would like to say, yeah, of course I'd go with him, but I've never witnessed a Roman crucifixion. He wanted them to be able to remember his words after the fact, but they were not ready yet. So Jesus speaks these words into them as he continues towards Jerusalem. Now, the next words that Luke writes in verse 35, the very beginning there, he says, he drew near to Jericho. All right, now that, normally that didn't mean a lot to me. So I'm not great with geography, but about a week ago, my wife and I returned back from a trip to Israel, and the geography makes some more sense to me now because I was there. So we were in Jerusalem, the first part of our trip. We spent 2 nights in Jerusalem. We stayed in a little guest house thing attached to some Scottish church. Didn't know we had Scottish churches, but it was beautiful. It was great. So we were in the guest house thing. There's this patio up on the roof. And the first night we did not go see the patio on the roof because I just wanted to go to bed instantly. And so the second night, we went up on the patio on the roof. The team's up there. There's there's vines, and it's gorgeous, right? And it's nightfall. It's a little dusky. And as the sun's going down, the darkness is coming over the land. All the lights of the city light up. And so this patio is overlooking the landscape of Jerusalem. It's these steep hills and valleys across there. You can see the Temple Mount in the distance. You can see the Mount of Olives over here. And then off to the right, way off on the horizon, there's some flickering lights. Kind of like if you're at PCB, you can see Destin sometimes. That, okay? And I'm like, what is that? And I got my phone out, and I'm getting the map thing oriented and stuff, and we're looking over here, and it's Jericho. We can see Jericho from the roof of our little Scottish hostel thing, right? We can see Jericho in the distance. Jericho's an eyesight of Jerusalem. It says as he's drawing near to Jericho, Jesus is in eyeshot. The hills on which he would be killed. It's the time is here. Jericho's not a long, far time away, right? Jericho was kind of the last stop for people that are coming down from Galilee. If you're walking through the valley, coming down from Galilee, you're heading towards Jerusalem to go to the temple to worship, sacrifice, whatever you're going to do, right? The last stop along that journey was Jericho. And there was a little road that connected Jericho to Jerusalem was called the Pilgrim Road. It was the last overnight stop. It's a little off the main roads. There's this short road that connects Jericho to the main King's Highway thing there, and you would walk up the hill to Jerusalem. It's about a 3,200-foot climb. About a day's walk away. Jesus is a day away from the gates of Jerusalem, knowing what's going to transpire when he gets there. He's on his way to the cross, can see Jerusalem in the distance. And then the passage takes a turn. You would imagine Jesus would be focused, intense, like the weight of everything that was going to happen would be like on his shoulders at this point. He's a day away from entering the city. And then this happens. Verse 35, he's drawing near Jericho, and there's a blind man sitting by the roadside begging, and hearing a crowd go by, he inquired what this meant. And they told him Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. And so he starts hollering. It says he cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus is heading to accomplish the very thing he was sent to do, the plan from the beginning of the world, all the way back in the garden, right? Like he's about to fulfill the plan from the garden to redeem what had been broken. Imagine the intensity of that, the focus of that, the weight of that. And like if this was a movie, the soundtrack is building heavy right now. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those kind of moments. And then there's some guy yelling on the side of the road over here messing up the vibe. And everybody does kind of what you would expect. Verse 39 says, those who were out in front, they rebuked him. They're like, knock it off, man. Like, chill. You know, like we're with Jesus. It says those who were in front rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. The followers, these people up front, they saw this man as an interruption. All right? Saw him as an interruption. This bigger mission, this bigger thing that needed to be accomplished. There's work to do. We're going. Can't be interrupted along the way. What happens when you're focused and you're intent, like you're in a hurry, you're locked in and you get interrupted? How do you react? Yeah, not great, you know? None of us do. Jesus is on the way to Jerusalem to fix all that had been broken, to defeat sin and death, save the world. But even so, look what he does. Verse 40, Jesus stopped. Just stopped. Verse 40 says he stopped and he commanded him to be brought to him. There's all these people milling around. The people up front are trying to quiet him down. The 12 are there. There's this whole procession, you know. Stops. Commands for the man to be brought. I think the gospel writer Mark loved this story. And the reason why is because, Mark includes a lot more info than Luke does. Mark includes his name. His name's Bartimaeus. When Mark tells the story, he records a scene like this. In Mark 10:49, he says, and Jesus stopped and said, call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, take heart, get up. He's calling you. The message travels through the crowd over to Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus is sitting over there hollering, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus, son of David. And finally like, hey, it's okay. He's calling you. Come on. Y'all, Jesus is not too busy for the broken. The broken are not an interruption. They're not an aside. They're not like something like tangential to the mission or something. Jesus came to seek and save the lost, and there's one more calling on him. Jesus has time and space, room for one more. There's always room for one more. There was room for those of you who were believers in the room. Like there was room for you. Where Jesus kind of came alongside the roadside of your life and stopped when you were not deserving of that and met you and called to you, received you, restored you, saved you. There was room for you. And having found room for you, is he out of space? No. Those of you in the room who are not believers yet, who are still wrestling with this, trying to figure this thing out, if you're going to try to do life on your own and fix stuff yourself, or if you're just going to fall in the mercy and grace of Jesus and believe, I just need you to hear, Jesus is not too busy for you. He's come and parked it right beside the roadside of your life this morning in this room in this conference center or whatever thing this is, and just to call on you if you'll cry out to him. Jesus doesn't see him as an interruption. He doesn't see you as one either. He is not so high and exalted to ignore even this one blind beggar on the side of the road calling to him. He's not too busy and too important for you either. If you came in feeling small, if you came in feeling insignificant, if you came in feeling like too big of a mess for him to of course, if he is there, why would he want anything to do with me? Because me and you are Bartimaeus. Those of us in the room who are Christians, we know that we were Bartimaeus. Do you remember that moment? Do you remember that season of life when you got to encounter Jesus for the first time and it really clicked of how unworthy you are and how glorious he is and the magnitude of your salvation? Do you remember how that felt? I don't want to ever forget that. I don't ever want that to grow dim as I just keep looking forward to the more and more stuff that there is to do. I don't ever want to lose my Bartimaeus moment here. I realized just how much of a mess I was. and just how glorious and good and kind he is. Christians, if you've have a recently, if the memory of your salvation has maybe I will say left the forefront of your mind, I'm praying that as we continue walking through this passage, that you're just reminded of your story. And even as you sit there, even as we walk through the passage, that you're just brought to like worshipful prayer before the Lord, just like thanking him for what he's done, that he stopped on the roadside of your life. The passage continues in Mark. This is how Mark says what happens next. It says in 10:50, he says, remember they said, hey, come on, he's calling you, right? Get up. Mark 10:50 says, and throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Dude's blind. You know, like it's risky there, man. You know, like jumps up and he's like booking it at him. He's like, I don't know, get me over there. Let's go, let's do this, right? I love that Mark says he sprang up. See, Bartimaeus knew what was at stake. More than most. Remember how he called Jesus the Son of David? That's massively significant. Like he's repeatedly said, calling him Jesus, Son of David, Jesus, Son of David. Like that term is a Jewish term reserved for the Son of God, the Messiah. And up to this point in the Gospel of Mark and the Gospel of Luke, no one else has used it. It's the first time it's spoken in either of those Gospels. Nobody's referred to Jesus as the Son of David. Nobody's referred to him as the Messiah. The only time it comes close is when Peter confesses Christ as the Savior. Messiah. Still doesn't use that term. This is the only time that term's seen up until this point. Jesus, Son of David. That means that Bartimaeus has heard the news of Jesus. And he has come to the point to believe that he was the Son of God. And by faith, he believed that Jesus could change his life. That's a big deal. Every one of us who's a Christian in the room, like that's what we've come to. We've come to that same point where we've come to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And by faith, we've believed that Jesus could change our life and change our eternity. Do you remember that? I love that Bartimaeus was unwilling to let the moment pass. You know, I'm kind of an introvert, or a lot of one. I said kind of because I'm an introvert and I didn't want to say I'm a lot of one. And the idea of me hollering at a crowd is not a thing that I can imagine myself doing, you know? I'm not a guy to make a scene. I'm not loud and boisterous until you put a microphone on me and you know, but like that's not my thing. I let a lot of moments pass. And Bartimaeus is like, I don't care what the embarrassment is. I don't care what the cost is. I don't care what anybody else thinks of me. I don't care what these yahoos over here telling me to be silent think. I just need to meet Jesus. Wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of him drawing near to Jesus. Not what the person next to him thought, not what a crowd thought. And I think a lot of times in rooms like this, there may be people in rooms like this who are like, because there's all these people, because the person next to me, I don't know if I'm going to draw near to Jesus. I don't know if I'm going to talk to somebody at next steps about trusting Christ because I don't know what the crowd's going to think of me. Bartimaeus is like, I don't care. He saw what was at stake. Springs up, comes to Jesus. In verse 41 of Luke 18, Jesus says this. He says, what do you want me to do for you? Now, a blind guy just like ran up to him. You know, he's been shouting at a crowd, made a whole crowd of people stop and like got over there. And Jesus is like, hey, bud, what you need? And do you think I know we've covered a lot of passages where Jesus was being a little snarky. You know, Jesus has some funny in him, all right? Jesus is not being funny here. He asks an obvious question. And from the outside looking in, it seems obvious, but he still asks. I talk to a lot of people who are going through hard things and have stuff going on. And a lot of times I talk to people who don't really want help with the real issue. They want a Band-Aid for whatever life is throwing at them right now, but they don't want to address the heart. They want to address the external and the external only. I talk to people who are, struggling what to do in relationships, or struggling what to do in a loss, or financial anxiety stuff, or whatever, the depression thing. I just want some help with my problem right now. And if I start asking about, great, tell me about your relationship with Jesus and how that's informing that. Like, listen, I'm not asking you about my relationship with Jesus. What do I do about my issue? How's that relevant? I just need some help with my thing. From the outside looking in, when I'm having those conversations, I know that the thing that's changed my life and given me purpose and given me hope and given me peace in the middle of whatever I'm facing is Jesus, not somebody's advice. But a lot of times we want advice more than Jesus. So Jesus asks, what do you want me to do for you? I think a lot of us accidentally pursue some version of self-help with a little bit of Jesus mixed in. When we face struggle, when we face things we don't know what to do, we want a lot of worldly advice, and if you can throw a passage on top of it to season it with some Jesus, that's even better. I just want you to hear this more, like self-help without Christ is like a Band-Aid for terminal cancer. Like doesn't help. We don't need a just help with the present situation. We need a heart change, we need a life change, we need a reorientation around the person of Jesus. I don't need to know how to be a little more effective in my career. I need to know how to leverage my career for the kingdom. I need to know what Jesus' purpose is for my life. I don't need to have some like breathing strategies to help with anxiety. I need to know how Jesus is my peace. I don't need to know some conversational questions to ask my wife so we can have a little bit better date nights. I need to know how the person of Jesus Christ informs my role as a husband so I can draw near and serve my wife well. Self-help without Jesus is a Band-Aid. Jesus asks Bartimaeus if he wants a Band-Aid or if he wants a cure. That's what he's asking. What do you want? You want a Band-Aid here, Bartimaeus? You mean fix some eyes? Or you want something deeper than that? Listen, if you're wrestling with faith in Christ, if you're wondering, maybe you can fix all your stuff on your own, and maybe you just need some Jesus Band-Aids, you're going to come to church every once in a while, and they'll say something helpful, encouraging, give you some practical advice on how to handle that topical issue. Like, you don't need a Band-Aid, you need a cure for your sin, for your brokenness. I know maybe there's something in you that just wants to feel better for today, but like, there's something better being offered to you. Not just a solution for that one thing, but a renewal, a redemption, like being remade, saved, restored for this life and for eternity. Do you want to be made new or do you want a Band-Aid? I remember last semester sitting there with a college student who was having some questions about trusting Christ. And we're having this conversation. We're talking about all of the sin, all the struggle, all the stuff that they've been kind of going through, right? And we'd had a long conversation over at Monarch where, like, it was just a lot of backstory of difficulty, a lot of sin, a lot of rough. And then I just got to stop and we got to talk about the person of Jesus. And in that part of the story, there's just a lot of good and a lot of beauty and a lot of power, a lot of mercy. We talked about how Jesus has done a work on the cross that washes away sin, that restores and redeems, gives new life, new purpose, like reorients all of that stuff. That coming to Jesus isn't fixing all of that and getting it all cleaned up so you can come to him. It's just coming to him so he can fix everything that's been broken. When we're talking about the gospel, we're just explaining this foundational truth of the cure, not the Band-Aid, right? And I got to the end of what I had to say, and there's looking at this person sitting across from me in the middle of a super crowded coffee shop. I said, how does that sound? And with tears in their eyes, I just said, that sounds unbelievable. Christians in the room, do you remember that? Like when you heard and understood the gospel and it was just unbelievably good news for you. I want you to remember that this morning. I just want you to set in that this morning, remembering like when you met him and he did that for you. If you're not a Christian yet, you're still wrestling with that. I just want you to know, like, that's what's available to you. It's not a bunch of work that you're supposed to do to clean yourself up and then you get to like finally be a part of something. No, like he's done everything that there is to do. He's paid for all the sin. He's offered you the redemption, and all there is for you to do is just cry out to Jesus. So Bartimaeus, he asked for his sight to be restored in faith. And this is what happens. Verse 41, he said, Lord, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, recover your sight. Your faith has made you well. Bartimaeus had already covered the faith side. Bartimaeus he'd already decided Jesus is the Son of David. He is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is the Redeemer of all. Like, he is the Messiah. And there's a present issue that Bartimaeus needed some help with. Recover your sight. Your faith has made you well. It says immediately Bartimaeus recovered his sight, which I just imagine that for a second. And it says this, and he followed him, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, they gave praise to God. He didn't just receive his sight. It's not the most important thing that happened even. Bartimaeus moved towards Christ in faith, and he received his sight, and he got to follow along with Jesus, just glorifying him along the way as he went. That's it. Christians, that's what's happened to you and I. Like, out of our blindness, we were healed, and we're invited to just get to be with the one who has rescued us. Like, just enjoy being with him. There's no massive rule book or something. There's not like you're not saved into just simply a bunch of tasks. You're saved like just to know him, to be able to glorify him, to follow him, just be with him, enjoy him. And everything that we do as believers, like the things like our missional engagement and our sending, like all of the stuff we do, that is not out of coercion or obligation or something. It's just out of this thing of getting to glorify him and follow him along the way. Haven't been rescued. We glorify God and we follow him. The Westminster Catechism puts it like that, right? One of my friends talked to me about that last week. Let's remind ourselves of this. Like it says, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that light? I've heard it rephrased this way, and I kind of like it better. No shade or whatever, but like I kind of like it better this way. Man's chief end is to glorify God by enjoying him forever. That's who we're called to be. Our chief end is to glorify God by just enjoying him forever. As we are sent, as we go, as we share, as we obey, we are enjoying him, glorifying him as we're walking with him. Bartimaeus found himself on the side of the road with Jesus walking by. He cried out in faith, recognizing that Jesus was the only one who could do something about his condition. Jesus stopped everything to draw near to this one who was broken. He restored him, he redeemed him, and he invited him to follow him, to walk in that enjoyment. And Bartimaeus walked along with the crowd, glorifying God, enjoying being in his presence. That's what you and I have been invited to. You know what Bartimaeus didn't do? He didn't draw near to Jesus for a minute and say, hey, I need some help with my little individual issue here. Get some help, and then go sit back down on the side of the road and let Jesus walk off. Like, I'm good. Enjoy the rest of your trip. I'm good over here, you know? Bartimaeus wanted to be with him. And along the way, glorifying God and just enjoying being with him. I need to be reminded of that this morning. I need to be reminded this morning for me in my life, like I just need to be brought back simply to glorifying God while following along the way. That's what he's invited me into. Christians in the room, I just want to give you some time just to be reminded of that. I mean, I'm trying to give you a lot of space this morning in our service just to do this work of glorifying God and drawing near, of being thankful. And so if you're a believer in the room, like I just kind of want you to check out and stop listening to me. I just want you to enter into a time like just on your own heart, your own mind, just remembering what it was like when Jesus changed you, restored you, redeemed you. And I just want you to have some time right there where you sit, just to glorify him. Remind yourself of the joy it is to follow him along the way. Now, so you guys do that, but if you're not a Christian yet, I want you to hang in with me just one more minute. If you're not a Christian yet, like I just want you to hear, like, he is willing to do that exact same thing that he did in Bartimaeus' life, that he did in my life, in yours. He is not too busy for you. He's not standing at a distance seeing how you're going to clean yourself up before you can draw near. He's standing at the roadside of your life saying, what do you want me to do for you? And if you'll cry out in faith to that Jesus, he will heal, he'll restore, he'll redeem, he'll set you free, because he is the Son of David, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, who died on the cross to pay for your sin, rose from the grave, defeating even death for you, and has offered all of it as a free gift to those who would ask. If you were Bartimaeus that day, would you have let Jesus pass you by? As a Bartimaeus today, will you let Jesus pass you by? I'm going to give you some time to pray as well. Austin's going to come, and as everybody in the room is working through something, I want you to pray. I want you to wrestle. If you're a believer, just in thankfulness and worship, you do private worship right there. If you're not a believer yet, will you let Jesus pass you by this morning? For all of us, our Next Step team is going to be back there in the back. There's just some members of our church who want to be able to pray for you, pray over you, and there's a power to that. And so if you want to go back to one of our Next Steps team members and just say, hey, would you just pray for me? The memory of my salvation's kind of been in the back of my mind. I've been chasing some of this stuff. Would you pray for me? They'd love to do that. If you're here this morning and saying, like, I'm Bartimaeus, I want to cry out to Jesus, I want to receive that, they're back there for you as well. And just a word on that. I know, like, when we're in the big room and it's real dark, Next Step team back there, the prayer team, they're stacked up. They're 10 people deep sometimes praying for people because the lights are off. The lights aren't off. We can't fade these. They just do what they do. Bartimaeus sitting there in broad daylight. He didn't care crowd or what. He wanted to draw near to Jesus. If you need to draw near and let somebody pray with you, have a conversation about Christ, I don't care if the lights are on. Go do what you need to do. Right? If you need to take a friend by the hand and you need to slip out the back and go have a conversation, do it. This is the time to respond to the one who died for us, rose for us, given his spirit to us. Like, you don't let him pass by. Don't let the moment pass you by. You respond how you need to. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you do the work you need to do. Next Step team is back there. Respond as you feel led.